Our friend, voice of the Cardinal. He is Troy Clardy. Troy, thanks so much for hopping on with us again.
Brian, awesome to be with you as always. And looking outside right now, sunny skies, 57 degrees. It's a little chilly, actually, but probably warm for the Syracuse Orange who are in the Bay Area this week.
Yeah, just only half the schools around here had snow days and were closed today, Troy. So just a little bit different, just a little bit different than we got cooking here. All right, so we last talked leading into the football game, and that was early September. That was when you guys were still dipping your toe into this whole ACC nonsense that we've all gotten ourselves involved in here. We're what are we, 5-6 months later? How's the whole experience treating you guys so far at this point?
Well, from a competitive standpoint, it's actually been very good. Football notwithstanding, unfortunately, but the Olympic sports fared all quite well. I think the worst that any of the Olympic sports did in or at least any of the Olympic sports did in the fall. Everyone finished top 12, right? Women's volleyball did terrifically. Women's soccer, men's soccer was a top 10 squad. So competitively, obviously, a lot of folks have a lot of questions across all sports, not just football, but across all sports about whether Stanford could remain competitive in the ACC. And I think to this point, certainly on the Olympic side of things, the answer to that has been a resounding yes. Now, football, different animal, as we all know. It's certainly, I certainly enjoyed my time in Syracuse in mid-September with that big win that Stanford was able to get. Unfortunately, for a lot of different reasons, Stanford not able to maintain that momentum. Many injuries and all sorts of other things that didn't quite go right down the stretch. And lo and behold, Stanford's 3-9. But from a competitive standpoint, Stanford overall still at the top of the Directors' Cup standings at the end of fall sports, which I don't think is where a lot of folks thought that it would be, given its new life in the ACC, given the travel schedules and all of that stuff. I think overall it's worked out pretty well to this point.
How has we talked about this back then too, and the idea of it, and I know a lot of thought has gone into it. How has the travel and academic side of Stanford mixed together so far? Has that gone as smoothly as it could have to this point?
Yeah, it seems to have. Obviously, kids are missing class a little bit more than they might have been previously. But maybe it's just more. I think people forget in some respects how far-flung the old Pac-12 was.
Yeah.
Try getting from Tucson to Pullman. It's not easy, right? And even from the Bay Area, it's a 2-hour flight to Colorado, 2-hour flight to Denver, 2-hour flight to Seattle. So, it wasn't exactly the most compact conference to begin with. And certainly for, the basketballs, the volleyballs, when you're always going on the road and playing in 2 different games, 2 different matches, back then, you were gone probably leaving on like Wednesday and coming back on Saturday or Sunday. And sometimes for basketball, sometimes you might have a Wednesday, Sunday double dip on the road. So you're actually leaving on Tuesday. So, from that standpoint, it's not exactly foreign. The new setup with Stanford traveling the way that it has to. The basketball team, I think the schedule makers really did them a solid in a lot of ways. Whenever Stanford does have to go back east, they'll play 2 on the road when they're back there every single on the weeks when they have to go back there. Wednesday, Saturday, guaranteed every single time. So Stanford will leave on Monday and come back, scoot back to the Bay Area right after the games. So, they'll have to miss maybe an extra day of class for a road trip than what they might have been used to previously. But, I don't think it's exactly, completely out of the norm for what Stanford has dealt with in the past. So, ideal, again, as we've talked about before, is this ideal? No, not necessarily. You make the best of it, you keep it moving, and so far, while other coaches are complaining to anyone who will listen, specifically one down in Westwood I can think of, Stanford across all programs has kept their head down, kept it moving, and has done quite well overall.
Yeah, I don't know what in the Mick Cronin you're talking about right now, Troy. I don't know anybody that's complaining. No, nobody's complaining about anything. As we got Troy Clardy, voice of the Cardinal, with us,
and Mick never complains.
No.
Mood.
No,
I tell you, I behind the UCLA bench at the Pac-12 tournament last year because they were playing the game before us. And I sat behind the bench, and it was an ear-opening experience. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, heck, he was back when Cincinnati and Syracuse, go figure. I mean, he coached then when they were in the Big East. So we got our fair share of the Mick Cronin life here in the Dome over the years as well. That is for darn sure. All right, Troy, we'll get into the hoops here in a second. I do want to ask you one football thing. The Andrew Luck story of him coming back to the program, that was a huge one around about a month ago. What has the early days of this Andrew Luck return and experience been like for everyone around Stanford football?
Well, it's certainly been intriguing, and it was certainly something that I was not aware of until I saw the press release. I woke up the next morning after the finale against San Jose State. I woke up the next morning around 7:15 or so, checked my email, which is a habit I should probably get out of, and saw the press release, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, well, that's pretty cool. And certainly that, is a huge, promotion for him because, oddly enough, the previous week, he was our radio spotter. He was hanging with us in the radio booth for Stanford versus Cal.
Of course he was.
The week before. So, many more cries for Andrew Luck there. But, it's been great to see that. It's been great to see a bit more positive interest attributed to the Stanford football program. And look, this is something, and Andrew and I talked about this. He cares about this. He cares about Stanford football. He cares about making sure that Stanford is able to remain competitive, A, in this day and age of college sports, while B, Stanford still being able to maintain its core values as a university. And those two things don't seem to necessarily be working in concert with each other these days, but there's a way, and that's what Andrew's job is to do. They've already pulled in more transfers. I believe right now the answer, the number on that is 9. Don't hold me to that entirely. But they've been able to, streamline the transfer process. It's not about lowering the academic standards. I don't think that's something that's ever really going to happen for Stanford. It was about streamlining the process of getting kids in here via the transfer portal and making things a bit more nimble in that respect. And we're certainly seeing that not just for football, but tennis. The women's tennis brought in someone off the transfer portal. It took like 2 weeks, just from December to just join the team this past week. So certainly with Andrew, helping to lead the way, allowing Troy Taylor to do what he really loves to do, and that is handle the X's and O's, handle the scheme, handle the players. Obviously, he'll have a say in roster management and all those sorts of things as well. But allows Troy to put his nose in the playbook and do those sorts of things that he loves to do. It allows Andrew Luck to have a new chapter and to help lead the program to where it was when he left and for a few years after. And it allows Stanford to kind of a chance to stay a bit on the relevant side of things. So it's pretty fascinating. I'm looking forward to seeing how it all turns out.
Yeah, it certainly added just a shot in the arm to everything going on out there. Absolutely. As we got Troy Clardy with us talking Stanford. Let's hit the hoops here. New coach in Kyle Smith, first year. He had a really great season at Washington State last year, and now here we are. We had no idea what to expect, right, with Stanford joining the league. Now 14-6, 6-3, killing it at home this season. Looks to be all pretty good in the Stanford world right now for hoops.
Yeah, 3 in a row. Look at him go. It's all done. It's all gone quite well for Stanford for the most part, and maybe better than maybe most folks thought it might have gone. Even at this point in the season, look, Stanford's next win will surpass their win totals that they had last year and the year before. They only got 14 wins the last 2 seasons. So their next win, hopefully it comes Wednesday. I'm sure that most of your listening audience will disagree with that hope, but hopefully that next win and that 15th win will come on Wednesday. Kudos to Kyle Smith, who has emphasized defense and team ball a bit more. Kudos to Maxime Reynaud for sticking around for his senior year. Where would this program be without him right now? And he's just been lights out. Jalen Blake's coming over from Duke, who's been fantastic as a leader on and off the floor. And then, by the way, late shots against Santa Clara and North Carolina, which as of right now Stanford's 2 quad 1 wins as of right now. So Seller, the transfer from USC, has been lights out at times, getting good contributions from freshmen like Donovan Young, and playing good ball overall. Sometimes it isn't pretty. Certainly that game against Florida State was not, even though Stanford was in control for much of it. But that was as tenuous, it seemed, an 8-point lead, a 10-point lead, at one point a 13-point lead, and even then you weren't comfortable. But Stanford able to find ways, by and large, to close out opponents, as they were able to do against North Carolina, as they were able to do against both the Florida schools last week, and as they hope to continue to do this week, not just at home tomorrow against Syracuse, but also hopping on the road and hopping on the plane and heading out to Dallas to face SMU on Saturday.
Yeah, you led there with Maxime Reynaud. I mean, he's a big dude in the middle. He's averaging, basically 21 and 11 right now. He's having a fantastic season. How tough has it been for opposing teams to match up with him this year?
Well, it's not just so much that he's big. I mean, even though he is 7'1" and listed at, 245 or so, it's not just that. It's that he is nimble. He is savvy around the hoop, but he's almost impossible to guard. He'll start up on the outside on the perimeter. He'll go face up on a dude and then just blow right by him and head straight to the hoop. Also, the fact that he can hit 3-pointers with more regularity than the 7-footer should be allowed to hit. I mean, heck, he had 4 against Miami the other night, and he's shooting just, 37%, I believe, somewhere around there on 3-pointers, and he shoots a lot of them entering this week. So, he'll jab that 3, he'll fake that 3, and then he'll just blow right by you and go right to the hoop and lay it in for an easy 2. Sometimes he'll run the floor himself. He'll get ahead in front of everybody. And make big plays that way. So, look, it's savvy as far as rebounding is concerned, but it's not just those things that, a quote-unquote big man is supposed to do that make him so dangerous. I mean, he can do those things, and intriguingly enough, by the way, against Florida State on Saturday, Max got called for 3 fouls. That's the only game this year in which he has been called for more than 2 fouls all year. So when you have all the things on your plate that a big man does, as Maxime Reynaud does, yet you're still savvy enough to stay out of foul trouble. He did get called for 2 early ones against Wake Forest, and that kind of set the tone, unfortunately, for that game a couple weeks ago. But when you're doing those sorts of things, and you can hit threes, and you can really score from just about any point on the floor, and more importantly, get to just about any point on the floor, those sorts of things make Nets one of the more unguardable players right now, it seems, in all of college basketball. If not for Cooper Flagg, I think he'd be in the driver's seat right now for ACC Player of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, look at the stats; they're fantastic. Adding the record, I mean, 6-3. But yeah, nobody's taking that from Cooper this year. There's no, there's no way around that. All right, last thing for you here, Troy. So Stanford is 4-0 at home this year against the ACC East Coast teams that have visited. Cal's 3-1. Like, how difficult has this trip west been for the East Coast teams, or is it just, hey, Stanford's pretty good and it would be tough for anybody to show up there?
Well, I also think that part of that is the competition a little bit, right? If it was Duke and Clemson and Louisville and those teams coming west, and none of them do this year, then maybe those numbers might look a little bit different. But as it is to this point, it's been the Virginia schools and the Florida schools. And not all of them are going to be making it into the ACC tournament. All those 4 are not going to be making it in there. We'll just put it that way. So that has certainly helped. Haas can be a tough place to play when that crowd is engaged and when that building is full, which it has not been for quite some time. And the same applies for Maple Street Building. Look, I mean, I'm sure that many of your listeners remember, the golden age, Casey Jacobson, Brevin Knight, Art Lee, Mark Madsen, those guys. And when, at Maples Pavilion, my God, Jim Nance, Billy Packer in the building, Brent Musburger, Greg Vitale in the building at least once or twice a year. And when Maples Pavilion was rocking, Tiger Woods chilling courtside, man, those were great days. Not there yet, but it's going to be a difficult place to play. And I think it's I get asked about it all the time from the visiting radio crews. It's like, gee, the travel, how do you deal with it? And it's like, well, we're on the West Coast. It's what we do.
Yep.
It's just part and parcel of it all. So I think it might be more of a mental deal for the teams that come from the East Coast because they're not used to it. We're used to heading back east, right? We're used to hopping off things. Again, the Pac-12 was not a compact conference to begin with. So, and obviously, having an 11 p.m. Eastern time tip-off, that'll be interesting. And altogether, I'm not that mad at that because how many times does Stanford have to deal with, and the other West Coast teams have to deal with 9 a.m. East Coast or 9 a.m. Pacific time starts whenever they head back to the East Coast. So I'm not necessarily mad at that. But, yeah, I think a big part of that is the teams that have come out this way, to put it diplomatically. But, there's also something to being pushed outside of your comfort zone and being asked to go, 2-3 time zones away to places that you've never gone to when you've never actually had to do them. So, yeah, I think there's a little something to that.
That was a very nice way of you, Troy, to say that Miami stinks this year. That was very diplomatic of you about the Canes. Not that Virginia Tech are any great shakes either.
No. This is terrestrial radio. I have to watch my language. But, yeah, Miami in transition, they'll probably blow that whole thing up, and who knows what it's all going to look like next week. But, in the meantime, look, Stanford is not in a position right now where they can just say, oh, here comes Miami. They lost 17 straight ACC games. Stanford's not in that position right now, and they need to keep winning, need to keep pace. And when they do get a chance against Duke and Louisville at this point, need to have good showings against those teams. So there's still plenty on the table for Stanford for the remainder of the season. And there's still plenty on the table tomorrow against Syracuse because if Stanford drops this one, it's obviously not back to square one, but it certainly would be a step back if Syracuse is able to come in and knock off the Cardinal some way, somehow.
All right, Troy, always great to talk. We'll be struggling to stay awake for it tomorrow night, but it'll be right in your wheelhouse out there on the West Coast.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, shed some tears for us if you can. But, Troy, thanks as always. Appreciate the time.
No, always. You guys know that. Always look forward to chatting with you guys. Thank you. But thank you both. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, and go Stanford.
All right, there we are. Our guy, Troy Clardy, voice of the Cardinal. We'll take a break right now. This hour brought to you by William Mattar. Phone lines open when we come back, 315-437-7644. Much more to come after this. It's Q Sports Talk and ESPN Radio.